now he has accessed a copy of the complaint. Now, Niranjan, first up, what does this complaint say? And I today want to know just one important question.
Yes.
You know, why has Air India been even coy about sharing the name, the details of this particular passenger? It's only after, we've brought up the story in a big way starting yesterday that today certain details have started to emerge.
Well, I saw the response that was given by Air India, Deepti. For them to even suggest that they appeared to have sorted the issue and that's why it's okay, I think that itself tells you that there was a casual approach to this entire incident. And I have the full complaint copy. In fact, we also have the name of the passenger, but we are withholding that information. We are not naming the woman passenger, the 70-year-old who was the victim in this particular case, who had to face that pervert and that creep on board midair. But let me read out the entire ordeal as she wrote while describing this entire incident to the grievance, Air Seva grievance, right? I'm going to read out, Deepti, it's a fairly long letter, but I think it's the first time that any channel is putting it out, and no other channel has put out the full details. Republic has accessed the full letter, the full complaint, the full incident being described by the 70-year-old woman passenger herself. Let me read that out. She says, I would like to submit a complaint. I would like to submit a complaint about my appalling experience traveling on Air India business class flight AI 102 seat 9A from JFK to New Delhi on the 26th of November 2022. During the course of the flight, shortly after lunch was served and the lights were switched off, a male business class passenger seated in 8A, basically just right behind her, seated in 8A, walked to my seat, completely inebriated. He unzipped his pants and urinated on me and kept standing there until the person sitting next to me tapped him and told him to go back to his seat, at which point he staggered back to his seat. I immediately got up to notify the stewardess of what had happened. My clothes, shoes and bag were soaked in urine. The bag contained my passport, travel documents and currency. The flight staff refused to touch them. She says the flight staff refused to touch them, sprayed my bag and shoes with disinfectant and took me to the bathroom and gave me a set of airline pajamas and socks. I asked the staff for a change of seat but was told that no other seats were available. However, another business class passenger who had witnessed my flight and was advocating for me pointed out that there were seats available in first class. The flight crew told me that the pilot had vetoed giving me a seat in first class. So that's a very, very, very big charge. I'm reading that point out again, Deepti, only because it's the first lapse, the first time that Air India is being questioned, actually twice, because the first time she says they refused to touch my bag, they sprayed it with disinfectant and took me to the bathroom and gave me airline pajamas. And then she says another business class passengers who had witnessed my flight advocating for me pointed out that there were seats available in first class. And she says the flight crew told me that the pilot had vetoed giving me a seat in the first class. So this shows that the pilot knew what had happened and that they refused to give her a first class seat. And after I had been standing for 20 minutes, one of the senior flight staff offered me the small crew seat used by the airline staff, where I sat for about 2 hours. I was then asked to return to the initial soiled seat. Although the staff had spread sheets on the seat, the area was still damp and reeking of urine, and I refused to sit there. I was then given the steward seat for the rest of the journey. In the meantime, one of the senior flight staff came to me and asked me how I wanted to handle the situation. She was then asked how she wanted to handle the situation. I told them that I wanted the man arrested immediately by the airport police. They asked me if I would like to talk to the ground staff, and I told them that I most certainly would. Can you believe it? She says, I wanted the man arrested immediately. A senior flight staff came to me, asked me how I wanted to handle the situation. She was given the option. She was given the option of deciding how she wanted to handle the situation. She said to them immediately, I want him arrested. She said, I wanted the man arrested immediately by the airport police. They asked me if I would like to talk to the ground staff. I told them I most certainly would. Then what really changed, Deepti? I'm going to read out the rest of it. She says the flight staff were in the meanwhile also having discussions with the offender, who was sobering up by this time, and they came and told me that he wanted to apologize to me. I stated clearly that I did not want to interact with him or see his face, and that all I wanted was for him to be arrested on arrival. However, the crew brought the offender before me against my wishes, and we were made to sit opposite each other in the crew seats. I was stunned when he started crying and profusely apologizing to me, begging me not to lodge a complaint against him because he's a family man and did not want his wife and child to be affected by this incident. In my already distraught state, I was further disoriented by being made to confront and negotiate with the perpetrator of the horrific incident in close quarters. I think we need to highlight all of this. She was made to sit opposite. She was made to sit opposite this pervert, and he broke down. She says, I did not want to do this, and yet she was asked to go ahead with that. She says, in my already distraught state, I was further disoriented by being made to confront and negotiate with the perpetrator of the horrific incident in close quarters. I told him that his actions were inexcusable. But in the face of his pleading and begging in front of me and my own shock and trauma, I found it difficult to insist on his arrest or to press charges against him. I demanded from the airline staff, she says, I demanded from the airline staff that Air India reimburse for me my shoes and clothes, but they said they had nothing to do with this, and that the man in question should pay me for that dry clean of my shoes and clothes. They got my phone number, which they later passed on to the offender for payment for my shoes and dry cleaning. I subsequently returned the payment as I did not want to take his money. I mean, this is, these are very, very disturbing details. They asked Air India to bear the expense, but she says that Air India instead passed on her number to him
Niranjan.
to pay. And no, it doesn't end there. Dipti, doesn't end there. The letter goes on. Do you want me to read the rest of
Yes.
it? This is really disturbing.
Niranjan, just give me 30 seconds, Niranjan.
Yes, go ahead.
30 seconds. We are breaking a quick development on the story. We are learning that the Civil Aviation Ministry already has asked Air India now for details. So the government there taking note of the Big Republic campaign, the government stepping in, Niranjan. And I think this letter makes the story even more important right now for the government to step in. You know, what was a deal being struck was the airline actually asking this victim and the perpetrator there, this creep, to actually strike a deal. And, you know, they wanted to hush the entire case. Now, what we are given to understand right now is that the Ministry of Civil Aviation has taken note of the Republic's reportage. They've also asked Air India now to provide all the details of the entire incident. They've also asked Air India to do an internal probe in the matter, submit the report to them as soon as possible. The probe has to be time-bound. These are all initial details coming in that our colleague Piyush has been able to share with us. We'll also see if we can quickly get him live with us as he's tracking the story. And the government sources also saying we encourage people to complain, put out all their grievances on the Air Seva portal. This is exactly what the senior citizen did. She has put out the complaint because Air India did absolutely nothing about this. The government is also saying we ensure that there is going to be speedy justice for the victim. And if these allegations are found true, we will take strictest action possible. But right now what they're doing is waiting for the first internal report to come in from Air India. And they also say, Niranjan, this is important, that Air India should also take the strictest actions against its crew members.
Yeah, Deepthi, I just wanted to read that last paragraph for our viewers because I think this is the most important paragraph. I'll just read it quickly and hand it over to you. She says, not only was the Air India crew deeply unprofessional, there are also a number of failures worth pointing out. First, the crew did not show good judgment about how much alcohol to serve a passenger. Second, the crew was not proactive in managing a very sensitive and traumatic situation, and I had to advocate for myself throughout, waiting for long periods of time to get a response. My son-in-law sent a complaint to Air India on the 27th of November, and they agreed to reimburse the ticket. To date, they have issued only a partial refund. However, this is hardly sufficient compensation for my traumatic experience. I also personally emailed a complaint directly to Air India on the 27th of November 2022, fully expecting them to call me for further investigation of the situation in order to take proper action and initiate proper grievance settlement. However, they've not done that yet, and her name is here, so I'm not going to sort of point that out, but she ends by saying it's a shame when a national airline fails to protect the safety and dignity of their customers, especially senior citizens. clearly this has to be addressed by the people at the highest level. So it's a damning letter, it's a powerful letter, one that tells you that this was perhaps a shoddy cover-up attempt that went completely wrong. And I think, just one last part, Dipti, I'm handing it back to you. Can you believe it? All this while we've been reading reports, etc. None of the media houses showed what really happened, and this was the letter. Can you believe it? Nobody actually put the operative part of the lapses out. Why would they do that?
I think that's a question that today people are also asking. You know, Niranjan, like I said, a lot of our viewers already watching that story, and they say for the very first time, they have a very, very clear idea of what really transpired. You know, a blow-by-blow account of what really this creep, this pervert has done, what Air India did, not just in action. I would say this is complicit in this entire act.